Good morning, everyone. It's an honor to welcome you here today to the George Washington University's inaugural Cybersecurity Stronger Together Public-Private Partnerships Conference, a dynamic gathering of leaders from government, industry, and academia working together to tackle the most pressing cybersecurity issues of our time. This in-person conference, co-hosted by the GW College of Professional Studies and the Cyber Guild, is designed to explore ways to better secure critical infrastructure in the face of evolving threats through collaboration and innovation. I am thrilled to announce that this is just the beginning. We will be back here with another Cybersecurity Stronger Together in-person conference, this time next February. But in between, we will have the chance to continue to engage in these conversations online, partnering with Fed Insider to offer you webinars where we can come together over coming months between our in-person convenings. Now, at a time when cybersecurity is at the center of national security, economic stability, and global competition, we hope that our Cybersecurity Stronger Together in-person and virtual events will serve as a platform for industry leaders like you to share insights, to build strategic partnerships, and identify actionable solutions that will shape the future of a more secure digital future. But before we dive into today's discussions, I want to take a moment to express our sincere gratitude to our many sponsors here today, particularly to Leidos, our exclusive conference sponsor, for your commitment to advancing cybersecurity innovation and workforce development. You make events like this possible. We are also incredibly grateful for our many other sponsors, including Paladin Capital Group, Mantech, and Diatonic Consulting. These partnerships help bring together the brightest minds to explore solutions that will protect our digital future. We thank you all for your support. But speaking of partnerships, this is a day where we hope to partner with many of you here in the audience, whether it's through strategic collaborations, customized training programs, or by engaging with our talented students and faculty. Together, we can build a stronger, more resilient cybersecurity workforce. As leaders, we all know that cybersecurity is not just about technology. It's about people. Developing a workforce that is prepared for an ever-evolving cyber landscape is critical, and the George Washington University's College of Professional Studies, we are committed to helping organizations like yours build that workforce. Each of you has received at check-in a one-sheet outlining the many ways you and your organization can engage with us, but I want to highlight just a couple of those ways. We offer industry-aligned programs and training, flexible learning options, hands-on cyber training from experienced industry experts, industry micro-credentials and certifications, and customized workforce solutions. Today, we are also thrilled to announce two new exciting partnerships with ISC2 and ISACA, two globally recognized nonprofit organizations dedicated to advancing IT and cybersecurity expertise. These collaborations reinforce GW's commitment to equipping students and professionals with cutting-edge skills to meet the demands of an evolving workforce. Through these partnerships, and starting just next month, we will launch GW CyberForge, a library of micro-credentials and professional development programs integrated with our partners' industry-leading certificate programs. You'll find GW CyberForge on the university's new lifelong learning platform, RevU, which you can find at www.revu.gwu.edu. By aligning with these globally respected organizations, our college ensures that learners benefit from cutting-edge industry knowledge and best practices, equipping them to meet the evolving demands of our workforce. We also recognize, though, with the evolving economic landscape, there are many folks out there that are considering the next step in their career journey. A next step credential, now whether that's a degree program or a certificate, may be something that you're considering, and we hope that you will think about the GW College of Professional Studies as your new learning home. We do have scholarships available, including a new dedicated scholarship to those that have been affected by most recent federal government downsizing. We have a recruiting table right out there in the lobby if you'd like to learn more, and you can tour a free sample of our degree programs and check out our micro-credentials on our Review platform. Once again, thank you for being here today and for your commitment to strengthening cybersecurity through public-private collaboration. Now, it is my great pleasure to introduce Chris Rodriguez, Assistant City Administrator for Washington, D.C., who will provide a welcome on behalf of the city. Washington, D.C. has been a key partner in shaping the cybersecurity landscape, and we are grateful for the city's continued leadership and collaboration. Chris, please take the stage. We are so grateful for you joining today, and we look forward to hearing your insights.
Well, good morning, everyone. At least the weather's turning nice here in the city, although we have some rain today. My name's Chris Rodriguez, and I want to thank Dean Riddle for the warm welcome. I'm the Assistant City Administrator for Washington, D.C. A lot of people ask me what the heck that means. One of the things that I do is oversee all of the district's technology and IT innovation, our artificial intelligence initiatives, as well as all of our IT infrastructure. And on behalf of the mayor, Muriel Bowser, I'd like to thank GW's College of Professional Studies and the Cyber Guild for bringing together leaders to discuss these important issues today. For us as a city, we are increasingly digitally connected. A lot of people don't know that we as a city do support a lot of the federal government's IT infrastructure, not just the city, but also our federal partners. And we also support a lot of our private sector partners as well, and businesses here in the city. And what we've recognized through that support is that cyber threats and incidents don't recognize boundaries. And we're here today because that no single sector, the government sector, the private sector, can tackle these threats alone. Public and private partnerships are critical to sharing intelligence, expanding our resources, and developing innovative solutions that safeguard our systems, businesses, and particularly our community. And as a hub for government agencies, global businesses, and top research institutions, the District of Columbia is uniquely positioned to foster collaboration between the government and the private sector. We are not here at GW, not just a center for dialogue, but we're also a center for action. And DC continues to drive that innovation in cybersecurity policy, in technology, and in workforce development particularly. As I mentioned, cybersecurity is a shared responsibility, and government agencies like the ones that I oversee have to establish robust policies and frameworks. Our business community also, we talk with them a lot about investing in their infrastructure. And academic institutions such as GW do play an important role in equipping the next generation with the skills to meet our evolving threat landscape. We also in the district understand that workforce development is key. And like our partners in the private sector, we are looking for IT professionals to come into the government to help us work more effectively, more efficiently. Although we can't pay sometimes what the private sector can pay, we do offer a good experience and an experience to help your community and help your government. So today's sessions will help shape the future of cybersecurity and strengthen our collective preparedness and response. I encourage you all to engage fully, to share insights and explore new partnerships. Together, I believe that we can build a safer, more resilient digital landscape. I look forward to the productive day ahead, and I want to thank you for having me here today. Now I'd like to introduce Debbie Salas, the founding executive director of the Cyber Guild Foundation. Thank you, and have a great day.
Well, good morning, everyone. The light's shining, so I'm not seeing all the beautiful faces, but I'm seeing some that I recognize, so welcome. On behalf of the Cyber Guild, welcome. We are a public charity founded in the belief that our world will be more secure and safer when people are empowered to connect through technology. So the Cyber Guild are an amazing network of leaders, many of whom are here today and will speak throughout the course of the day. And welcome to our inaugural Stronger Together conference with George Washington University. Thank you to George Washington University for being such amazing partners. Particularly Liesl, it only took a few coffees and a silver diner lunch for us to begin a powerhouse relationship. And that's led to this event, and Jessica and Thomas, who some of you may have met, put this together in a really short space of time, which was great. Now we're here to talk about some pretty serious stuff. Protecting our digital assets, safeguarding our sensitive data, and keeping our systems and, frankly, our world secure. But what I want to share as a prelude to this is why the partnership between the Cyber Guild Foundation and George Washington University and this conference is such a timely and perfect fit. As the saying goes, past is prologue, and given the Cyber Guild name was inspired by the guilds of old, that's surprisingly relevant even today. Guild comes from the Saxon gilden, to pay, signifying the need to contribute to collective funds. And by the way, we're a public charity, so funds are always welcome. Indeed, guilds were organized craftsmen, they were merchants, and even entrepreneurs who banded together, pooled resources, shared information, and looked out for one another. So in a way, you could say they were the original version of a collaborative network. They ensured that individuals within their industries maintained standards, reputation, security, and overall the customer experience was protected. A fun fact, although women were not universally encouraged to join, when they did, they were held to the same high standards, attracted fair pay, and held in esteem for their trade and their contribution. The Cyber Guild are stalwart in our commitment to attract and retain the best talent of all shapes and sizes. And a testament to that is that you're being addressed today by a somewhat vertically challenged immigrant Irish woman. Fast forward to today, and guess what? We're doing something very similar in the world of cybersecurity, but with a modern twist. Just like the guilds built trust through collaboration and shared expertise, today's public and private sectors need to come together to tackle the massive cyber threats we face. Now, the term partnership to me seems too sanguine a term to describe what I hope we will talk about today. In the real world, public-private partnerships are an operational extension of the toolkit for the protection and preparation and defense of, frankly, important things. They are what help us to react and recover stronger and faster. For me, it's about relationships, and it's relationships that you can lean on and lean into when, frankly, you need to pick yourself off the ground. A partnership may be viewed by me, for sure, as a deal done with an organization. But powerful relationships are built between people over time. The allyship the Cyber Guild is growing are mission-driven, purposeful relationships. And that is what has brought us together with George Washington University, Liesl and her team. Cybersecurity isn't just the responsibility of one group or another. It's about creating mission-driven, purposeful relationships where both sides share knowledge, resources, and the innovations to protect everyone. Martin Buber, the philosopher, said, "For there to be a true relationship, there must be two separate beings who can relate." And so we have the Cyber Guild. We are agnostic of sector or industry. We are a convening power in the greater Washington area that activates some of the nation's best leaders and thought leaders to put people at the heart of the resilient and sustainable cybersecurity ecosystem. And we have George Washington University, a brand and a reputation at the forefront of education and research, a place where cutting-edge ideas meet academic rigor, and where the next generation of cybersecurity leaders is being shaped. We relate in our common commitment to building community, fostering innovation, and the meaningful relationships we need to create a world solutions that can address the cyber threats we're facing. So my desire is for the synergy between the Cyber Guild and George Washington University to emulate the relationships we need across the entire cyber ecosystem and ensure that we have the talent, the knowledge, and the solutions to stay ahead of cyber criminals. So I invite you, actually I encourage you, to dive into the conversations with a very open mind. I hope you bring a collaborative spirit and the understanding that, much like the guilds of old, we can accomplish so much when we work together for the greater good. So thank you very much for being here, and please have a great day building some meaningful connections. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Connie Utoff. I'm the Program Director of the Cybersecurity Strategy and Information Management Program here at George Washington University. It is a pleasure to be part of this conference today, Cybersecurity Stronger Together, Public-Private Partnerships Conference, and to welcome you to be part of this discussion. I'd like to begin by expressing my gratitude to Dean Riddle, Debbie Salas, the Cyber Guild Foundation, our sponsors, and everyone else whose efforts have made this day possible. I also want to thank all of you for being here. Your engagement in these discussions today is critical, especially for the future of cybersecurity here in our nation and around the world. With rapid changes today in the digital landscape, this is a crucial time for everyone, and to have events like this. Cybersecurity is not just a technical challenge. It is a national security imperative, and it affects every sector, every organization, every government, all around the world. The theme of today's conference, Stronger Together, is also a principle we reinforce here at the College of Professional Studies and in our program. Cybersecurity is not just a challenge for one organization, government, or organization to tackle alone. And the importance of collaboration, teamwork, and partnership cannot be stressed enough. Cyber threats are advancing at an unprecedented pace. They're driven by emerging technologies, artificial intelligence, and increasingly sophisticated threat actors. So this first panel today will explore how innovation, public-private partnerships, and workforce development can play a pivotal role in addressing these challenges. It is my privilege today to introduce two distinguished experts who will lead this conversation. Our keynote speaker, Amy Gilliland, is the president of General Dynamics Information Technology, GDIT, a global technology enterprise with operations in over 50 countries, with a workforce of over 30,000 professionals, delivering mission-critical capabilities for defense, civilian, and intelligence agencies. Under Amy's leadership, GDIT has driven advancements in artificial intelligence, machine learning, quantum computing, and cybersecurity, while simultaneously fostering an employee-centric culture that fuels innovation, efficiency, and operational excellence. She is a visionary leader dedicated to ensuring that our workforce is prepared for challenges ahead. Our moderator, Robert Creasy, is a partner at Mountain Waves Ventures, where he advises clients on a broad range of cybersecurity policy and risk issues. He served in senior counterterrorism and cybersecurity positions in the Clinton and Bush White Houses. He also served at the Department of State and Department of Defense, overseas in Israel, Somalia, and the Balkans, and is a graduate of GW's Elliott School of International Affairs. We are so honored to have them here today, so please join me in welcoming Robert Creasy and Amy Gilliland.
All right. Good morning.
Hi, Roger.
How are you, Amy? I'm great. We're under the lights here.
We're under the lights.
I
And
think there's people out there, but I'm not sure.
Good morning to all of you as well. Well, thank you first and foremost for taking the time to do this today. So, let's start with a big word up there on cybersecurity. I mean, there's really two parts of it I would ask you to comment on. One, how does GDIT approach the mission? Mm-hmm. And then, how do you view the threat landscape right now, given the work you're doing throughout the federal government?
Yeah. I'm going to take the second first. It's interesting. We serve all major government institutions and agencies. And so in those responsibilities, as part of the defense industrial base, our systems are under attack all the time. Right. So from a cyber perspective, we have a pretty good pulse on what our adversaries are doing in the moment. And that fuels our thinking, our investments, our innovation as a company. And it's an exciting time right now, Roger. The new administration has come in. They're seeing the aggressive posture of our adversaries. China, for instance, we saw DeepSeek. So it's an aggressive posture, not only in how they are going after our systems, but also how they're investing in their own capabilities. Right. We see that. And the administration is taking an equally aggressive posture, which is a great thing for innovation. So we saw the vice president in Europe a week or two ago talking about how AI can be an enabler. Mm-hmm. We see the administration leaning in from a technology perspective. And so for a technology company like GDIT, that affords us more opportunities to quickly drive technology into the mission. And that's really important. Your first question was, how are we thinking about technology and what are we doing? Well, our investments are informed by the mission requirements. So we don't have science experiments going on. It is, what does the mission need and how do we stay out in advance of that? So we have, for the last couple of years, really been doubling down on cyber, really in the aftermath of COVID and some of the things that we learned as a result of COVID, both in terms of where the infrastructure of the government is and the tactics and techniques that our adversaries are using. So we have solutions we call digital accelerators in cyber areas like zero trust, like full spectrum cyber. How can you use AI to do threat hunting? And also as we prepare for the future in post-quantum crypto. So, and we're able to bring those technologies to the mission through contracts like we have one that we won last year or late in the year before, where we protect all of the industrial infrastructure of 188 Air Force bases. Just like our adversaries are interested in the industrial base of America, they're interested in the industrial base of our military also. So it's an exciting opportunity right now, and there's a lot that we can bring to bear for cyber.
And I think it's always important to remind everyone there's no destination on cybersecurity. It is a never-ending journey.
I heard somebody say earlier this week, I know you and I were talking about that Stanford event in their AI report that they just published. It's not the beginning of the end, it's the end of the beginning.
I think that's
so apropos.
Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about innovation and technology, because we are in a period of change at what I would see, and I've been here for way too long, unprecedented speed. Yeah. Right? The new administration has come in and they've changed the paradigm by which change happens in the federal government.
Well, and technology is changing quickly too.
And technology is changing as well. So when you see the change that's happening in the administration, you see the need for innovation, for modernization in the technology world. How are you approaching it from where you sit right now?
Yeah, it's such a great question. At that event, I heard former Secretary of State, Dr. Rice, was talking about DeepSeek. And in her words, it was pedal to the metal time. Yes, I think your approach on your point on speed is important. And so as an organization, that sense of urgency is really important. So I think there's twofold. One, what is the technology that you're investing in it? Does that answer the requirements for the mission? And how do you get that to your customers faster? Right. So for GDIT, part of that is educating the workforce that is delivering on what is the art of the possible, and here are the solutions that we have invested in, both ourselves and also through commercial partners that we have. And then how can we drive that and talk to our customers and get that quickly into the mission? And I see early success with that, but it is a mindset change. To your point, this administration is really leaning in technology, and they are going to enable technology to come forward. That enables all sorts of things that make it easier for us to do. And so now I have to tell my employees, no, this isn't something that's going to take 3 to 5 years. Our customers need this now. You need to be talking to them about this now. Here is what the technology is. Here is your role in bringing it. Here is the education courses that you need to partake in to be ready for that. And so, for instance, Mike Groeschel down at SOCOM, or Special Operations Command, we are delivering a large language model to the highest possible classification of Intel network successfully. First company that has done that.
No other company's done that?
No other company has done that, not at that classification level. But that, and what does that do? That is helping intelligence analysis, which ultimately helps targeting.
Right.
So that is pulling that technology thread through very quickly. And why are we able to do that? It is that agile, sense of urgency where we know what our capabilities are, we listen to our customers, and we're able to bring that through quickly. Similarly, at Central Command, so responsible for 21 countries in Africa and Central and East Asia, the Middle East, we're completely overhauling their IT infrastructure and introducing technologies like AI and zero trust. So if you imagine the amount of intelligence that's coming through there, and intel is great, but if it's not actionable, or if you don't get it until after the threat has become real, it's useless.
It's a cool research project.
Yes,
which is important, but not from a mission critical perspective. So let's talk a little bit about the talent issue. And if anyone follows you on LinkedIn, you have put out some really fantastic thought leadership and examples of how GDIT is approaching the workforce and the talent issue. This is not a solvable problem. I mean, over the years, we've looked at workforce as such an enormous challenge, and some would argue we're still behind the curve. Some would argue there's no curve at all. It's just you're never going to get to a destination again. But you have done some really interesting things within GDIT. Can you comment on how you're approaching the talent, the workforce issue from your perspective?
Well, I'm slightly more optimistic than you. That was a real downer, Roger.
I'm from Boston.
We're never going to solve.
It's the New England negativity in me, Red Sox
fair.
fan,
But in support of your point, and just people keep me up at night.
Yes.
That is having a skilled labor force to go after the technologies that we're here and talking about today. That is what keeps me up at night, single-handedly. And the Bureau of Labor Statistics would say that we will have a 32% growth in cyber jobs between now and 2032. Right. So that puts credence in what you just suggested. And you're right, we don't have the luxury to just go get a brand new workforce to deliver these capabilities. So I think it is our fiduciary responsibility as a company to create, grow, evolve workforce that we have. So first and foremost, we are investing in upskilling and reskilling our own workforce. It's not it is evolving skills with very targeted learning that we're doing inside the company. And what does that take? Well, it takes designing the training, making time for employees to take the training, and having a long-range plan that understands what skills we need when, so that you can have that workforce prepared for when you meet those skills. Right. There's other things that we're doing also, teaming with universities. For example, you want curriculum that is, in terms of the workforce that is coming in, has the skill set that you will need to be delivering when they come to you. Right. Other innovative things, in government contracting, oftentimes the qualifications for jobs don't really match the capabilities of the workforce we have. So for instance, it might see that you need 12 years of experience in cyber, but I have somebody that has 4 years of experience and has far more knowledge on cyber than that individual with 12 years. So we're working on, hey, how can we not look, you don't necessarily have to have a 4-year degree, right? Or you don't have to have 12 years of experience. So how can we re-look at things that might be limiting the size of our workforce now? Additionally, I would say that we're looking at other geographies. So the National Capital Region is very penetrated in terms of the requirements that we have to serve here and the workforce and the cleared workforce.
Right.
But if we could expand beyond here in terms of learning and opportunities, and I think, I'm not sure if you, we've talked about it or not, but we have a center in Bossier City, Louisiana, where we have teamed with Bossier City Parish and the educational institutions down there on curriculum, and we have a pipeline for students to come into our business, and then we grow them from there. So, I think there are a lot of creative things that we're doing to lean into this cyber opportunity, I will call it, in terms of getting our workforce ready.
And I think what you're also touching at is the requirement to seek out diverse experience, perspectives from communities and from parts of the country that we may not typically look at in the DMV. And that gives you a workforce that's even more talented and capable for this environment we're dealing with.
Absolutely. We are expanding, it's a bigger pond, expanding the size of that, and really helping shape what that looks like, to make sure that folks have the right skills coming in.
That thinking is so important. So you mentioned partners. Let's talk about that quickly. You can't do this alone. Nobody can in this space. So your approach to partners to help the government do its mission, and then partnerships with interesting emerging technologies as well, that kind of answer the mail of what we're seeing right now, which is we need these new type of disruptive technologies to solve the problems when we are looking at a shrinking workforce in the federal space.
Yeah. It sort of gets at the real mission of a systems integrator like GDIT. So our customers, let's take Zero Trust, for example. Our customers, which is an important part of cyber, you got to know who's in your system and assume that all the bad guys are in there, right? In this case, you have to understand what is the established infrastructure at your customer, because they all have different levels of maturity in terms of how far they've gone down this Zero Trust path. They're not interested in you coming in there with a fully baked solution which causes them to rip out everything that they've done already. The role of a systems integrator is to come in, say, all right, I have 200 partnerships, which GDIT does. We pull $1.8 billion of partner technology. And what do I mean by that? We have relationships with cloud service providers like AWS. We have relationships with cyber companies like Splunk, like CrowdStrike. I know you're mentioning, you're going to be involved with CrowdStrike later today. And those emerging companies like IonQ, which is a quantum company focusing on fixing the data, because part of the problem of getting to quantum is that the data isn't organized in a way that quantum can leverage. So all of those realities and all of those partnerships help us talk to that customer. We've been in the mission space for a long time and say, here are your options. Right. We can be an unbiased person that comes in and says, I know your mission, I have these options, I recommend this, let's execute this together. But again, those partnerships are critical, and we are delivering them on real problems today. We have a significant relationship with AWS, and in Alaska, they have been dealing, as they are elsewhere in the country, with a lot of aerial vehicles and drones and things, and they've become overwhelmed. And if you think about the terrestrial reality there. They don't always have the coverage that they need to track those.
Right.
So teaming with AWS and its footprint, our AI technology, we are able to put a mesh net together that allows you, when you're tracking a target, for instance, and all of a sudden, because of the terrain and the coverage, the target disappears, AI can predict where that target will reappear. And what does that help you with? Well, it takes from the time to figure out what those targets are from 30 minutes down to 30 seconds.
Right.
So really applying those partnerships in the real world and bringing them to the mission.
And I think for the federal government, it's taking that and solving the immediate problem, the here and now, but then also, and you mentioned your digital accelerators, figuring out how do we help the government solve the problem over the horizon or around the corner.
Where the puck is going.
Right, right.
Yeah,
That's
that is also a mindset shift for, we're all busy defending our networks and everything right now and just trying to take care of our customers, but the federal government needs thinkers that are focused on the technologies that are on the come, the requirements that are on the come. The customer has a sense of where requirements are evolving, but they don't have the landscape of the technologies, and that's where those partnerships come in, and we need to pair those two together.
So we've got about 2 minutes left. I'm gonna go speed round here.
Oh dear. You guys up for that out there? You still out there?
Speed
Okay,
speed
they're
round.
out there.
I see you. You're there.
Okay.
What you're most excited about? What keeps you up at night besides workforce? And then what's the big message you want to leave the audience with? So, what are you excited about?
I am most excited about the opportunity that technology has and the fact that this administration and the evolution of technology is happening, that we can bring it to the mission. I was in the Navy for 10 years. I have a passion for the mission and being able to solve problems that have heretofore, we've been crippled at being able to address. That is exciting, and I see real world examples of that every day.
Yeah. Biggest challenge?
I know you said I couldn't say the workforce, but
Nope.
No. But it is. I think making sure that we have the right people in the right places with the right skills, that's a challenge, Roger.
In making the workforce understand that they are part of the solution, but they have a responsibility as well.
Yes.
Right?
Absolutely, 100% yes.
And so, with our remaining few seconds, takeaway message to the audience.
Yeah.
These issues and what you're doing.
It's part and parcel of what we just talked about. So for everybody in the audience, and to the point you just made, I think this is a real leadership moment.
Yeah.
And every single one of us has an opportunity to bring technology to bear. But bringing technology to bear is really about helping other people innovate.
Yeah.
And so when I think about it from a leadership perspective at GDIT, we have built a company with a soul, a company that delivers 100%. We're focused on the mission, but it is so important right now to have conversations with employees, to tell them what's next, to help them thrive in their careers, and to get them excited about what's out there. And it couldn't be a more important time for everybody to say, how am I going to accomplish that? Because to the point you made earlier, we are in a full-out sprint, and it's going to take everybody to do that.
It's the definition of leadership, being able to inspire the workforce, have them grow, and have them ready for what comes next. And you've done a fantastic job helming this at GDIT for several years now. So I want to thank you very much for coming today, for setting the table for the rest of the conference. And it was a real pleasure, Amy. Thank you so much.
It's been a great pleasure. Thanks, everyone, for your time.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome. My name is Dr. Scott White, and I am the Program Director for the Cybersecurity Undergraduate Program here at the College of Professional Studies. I have the great pleasure of introducing our first panel to you today. We'll begin with our moderator, Lucien Neimer, CEO of Building Cybersecurity, Morgan Adamski, Executive Director of US Cybercom, Matt Hayden, Vice President of General Dynamics Information Technologies and a member of our college board, Allison King, Vice President of Government Affairs, Forescout Technologies, Michael McLaughlin, co-leader, Cybersecurity and Data Privacy, Practice Group, and Principal Policy Advisor, Bucknam, Ingersoll, and Rooney. And our last guest today is Catherine Wong, Public Sector Cyber Partnerships and Principal for Sandbox AQ. Welcome, everybody.
All right, you ready? Guys ready? All right, we'll go ahead and get started here. So first of all, I got to tell you right now, there's a lot of firepower here. And the goal here is to leave you with a couple payloads by the end of the session, to use military terms. So Lucien Neimer, I'm honored to be able to share the stage with some pretty credible minds. And over the next hour, we're going to have a conversation, so it won't be me moderating. We definitely don't have slides. But the goal for this panel is to leave you with some insight, some things that you might want to think about, things that we need to collectively work on together. That's really what we're trying to get done over the next hour. I appreciate the opportunity for Dean Riddle and CPS, as well as the Cyber Guild, to be able to share the stage and be able to offer you this some good conversation over the next hour. We will not be taking questions because, first of all, I can't see anybody in the audience, so I'll just let you know that right now. But most of the panel will be here for the remainder of the morning. So if there's a pressing issue you'd like to follow up on, please take that opportunity to do so. So I'm going to have each panelist introduce themselves because I'm awful at introductions. And then we're going to start off with some opening comments, and then we'll get into the conversation, and then we'll have a lightning round. So that's how the next hour is going to go. So, Morgan, over to you.
So, good morning, everyone. My name is Morgan Adamski. I'm the Executive Director of US Cyber Command. I've been in the position for about 8 months, which is the senior-most position from a civilian perspective, but also third in command and part of the senior leadership team. Thank you so much for having me and to all the sponsors that put on this great event. I've been in cybersecurity in one way or another my entire career in the intelligence community, in the Department of Defense. I've worked on the defensive side in terms of following Middle Eastern cyber threats and various things, all the way back to when the Iranians were conducting distributed denial of service attacks against the banks. I was a junior analyst at the time. I spent some time down at the Pentagon, actually, writing the 2018 DoD cyber strategy, as well as participating in the cyber posture review. I've also been part of offensive cyber operations in my career, and then I helped stand up the Cybersecurity Collaboration Center, which is part of the Cybersecurity Directorate at NSA, which is all focused on public-private partnerships, and now I'm in the command. So really been able to work all the facets across the government right now in terms of cybersecurity, and it's been a great experience. So really excited to be here.
Fire away, Matt.
So I can't compete with any of that.
So, it is pretty
I'll just say,
intimidating.
recovering senior federal official, came from DHS and CISA. My role is within GDIT to help threat-informed strategies to really make sure that when we look at things like pacing threats, China adversaries, as well as ransomware, where that plays into how we do future technologies, emerging threats, and the like. I also will bounce back and forth between being an unabased advocate for the programs we've got here today. So thank you for being here.
No worries, Allie.
Yep. Allie King here. I'm VP of Government Affairs at Forescout. In my position, I'm responsible for all the policy partnerships and lobbying. Before going to Forescout, I spent over 12 years in the federal government, part of Department of the Navy, Standard Missile Program, which has been defending the fleet for over 50 years. Went to the Pentagon, spent some time there as well. Was a defense fellow for Rep. Mike Gallagher from Wisconsin, and also was a staff on the Cyberspace Solarium Commission before spending some time at CISA.
All right, and a fellow bomb thrower, Michael.
Yeah.
My name is Mike McLaughlin. I lead the cybersecurity and data privacy practice group at the law firm Buchanan, Ingersoll & Rooney, specializing primarily in cybersecurity and incident response. I also work as a cyber policy advisor for the firm prior to figuring out what I wanted to be when I grew up and somehow landing on attorney. I was in the Navy for about 12 and a half years active duty, where I was an intelligence officer, the last 6 of which I was the senior counterintelligence advisor for U.S. Cyber Command.
And then the mad scientist, Ken.
Yes, so good morning, everyone. My name is Catherine Wang. I am head of partnerships at the public sector, and I should say I know every single one of these panelists, but with the exception of one, this is my first time being able to share the stage with them. So thank you to George Washington and the Cyber Guild for putting this on. I spent my career to date at Google for the first 16 years of my life working on conversational AI and enterprise platforms. And then I went into operational technology, OT, cybersecurity, specifically on supply chain intrusion. And then most recently in the quantum technology space. So not computing, but quantum technology in quantum sensing, quantum navigation, and quantum cybersecurity.
And then I'm Lucian Niemeyer. I'm an Air Force vet, also a veteran in the United States Senate Armed Services Committee for 11 years. And then more recently, I was the Assistant Secretary of Defense for all installations, energy, and environmental programs for DoD, where I really got tasked by the Secretary of Defense to get after cybersecurity, particularly for the connected technologies that we have throughout our inventory of installations and infrastructure. And then once I also worked at the White House at OMB for the last 8 months of Trump administration, and now left my federal government in 21, started a nonprofit called buildingcybersecurity.org. Please look it up. It's really intended as a group of volunteers working on frameworks to provide some practical guidance on how to safeguard operational technologies in this room, in this building, and in the built environment. So collectively, we've got a lot of activity, not just in thinking, but doing. Looking forward to getting to that. One thing I hope the audience is picking up on, we all talk about the speed of light, so you're going to get about 3 times the amount of content in 1 hour than you normally would. There are no slow talkers up here, so hopefully you guys be able to take notes and be able to keep up with us, because it's going to go fast and furious. So unlike a lot of panels, what I would like to do, there's a lot of deep thinkers here. What I'd like to do is have each of our panelists, and I'll start with you, Cap, start off with about 3 minutes of some of the big things that you're worried about, what you're thinking about, and when it comes to cybersecurity, particularly when it comes to partnerships. And really to get the conversation going, what do you really want to leave with the audience right up front, and then we'll go into details in the question period.
Sure. So I love using this example. At DEF CON last year, I watched a hacker hack into an insulin pump in 8 minutes. I also watched somebody turn an oven into a bomb, right? And critical infrastructure in particular, if you extrapolate the implications, this is happening today, right? California has been attacked. Texas has been attacked, and the list goes on and on. And when we think about the cyber war that's happening in front of our face, the big question that I have on mind is, how did it get here? Like, how did we lose the upper hand in this cyber war? And it came down to basically 3 observations in my mind. The first is, somewhere between 1980 and today, we started prioritizing speed over security, right? Industry in particular rewards this, speed to market. So if everybody's gunning at who's going to be the next OpenAI, who's going to be the next unicorn, where are the policies? Where are the requirements? Where are the safeguards from a cybersecurity standpoint to make sure that our digital ecosystem is protected from those types of attacks, right? A lot of us think about cybersecurity as ransomware, blah, 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 may not affect your day-to-day. Well, it's gonna if it's affecting your food supply, your water supply, or energy supply. The second thing that I discovered also is at some point we lost the ability to educate, or at least acknowledge, the value of our own data. A good example of this, MyGov, which is a healthcare platform out in Australia, powers the entire healthcare system within that country, was attacked with a cyber attack, and a lot of the data was exfiltrated. There was mass outcry across the people, and within 6 months, the Australian government was able to issue a cybersecurity strategy, right? Like, that's the level of speed and demand that we want to see from people when they understand the value of their data and how critical it is to safeguard that. The third thing is, somewhere along the way, we started sacrificing security for cost, right? Now our electronics are cheaply made overseas. And I spent the last 8 months of my life specifically looking into supply chain intrusion, where these devices are coming from overseas into our homes, into our military facilities, and into our companies, our business offices, Trojanized, preloaded with malware. What are the implications, right? The overall landscape is China, PRC, has stolen and amassed more intellectual property, the wealth of intellectual property that the United States has to offer, than every other nation state combined. So that's what keeps me up at night. In terms of public-private partnership, there's already a vacuum of talent in this space. We can't afford to be fighting these on our own with one arm tied behind our backs. I want to see more collaboration where we take people like the Googles of the world with giant targets on the back that literally wrote the book on software design principles, doing rotations and master programs with folks in the government, sharing that knowledge, having some really sophisticated phone tree program where we're all sharing information when intrusions happen, new TTPs are discovered, and we have frameworks for that, but there needs to be more. And then the last I would say is I encourage every single one of you to ask for more, demand more of the technology providers that you use and the ones that you accept into your homes, right? We need to see you all care more about your digital identities, because ultimately that's where everything lives.
All right, Mike.
I can't follow that.
That was the plan.
So I'm gonna Tarantino this, and I'm gonna tell you exactly what I'm going to tell you from the outset, and then we're gonna go back in time. So the biggest thing that I want you to take away from this is there is a much larger picture than any of us are seeing right now. And there are geopolitical drivers that we need to have a good sense and understand when we talk about cybersecurity. Cybersecurity does not exist in the vacuum. That's number one. Number two is risk. And risk is a spectrum. When we talk about cybersecurity, and Kat touched on this a little bit, there's a difference between efficiency and security because the two can never overlap. And where you exist on a spectrum between those two, that's your cybersecurity risk. And the third one is data. Huge problem, and we'll get to it. So the first part is from a geopolitical perspective, when we look at cybersecurity, the vast majority of us say this is an IT problem, and we look at it in a silo. And we say, here is my network, here is my fortress, this is what I need to protect. Without understanding that even if you're protecting your network, the hardware, the firmware that's in your network may be developed in China, may be subject to Chinese laws, may have prefabricated malware that's already installed as a backdoor. I'm not going to ask for a show of hands, but how many people here use a Lenovo laptop? We talk a lot about TikTok. We talk a lot about Temu. We talk a lot about other Chinese mobile applications because of the risk to data, because of the risk that the Chinese laws and their legal framework present to the US and to our data. Then we have all of our hardware manufactured there. This is a huge gap and a huge problem that so many in cybersecurity don't seem to realize, or at least seem to accept the fact that this is an inevitability. The second part is risk. The spectrum that we need to understand when you're looking at your own cybersecurity or you're looking at your organization, everyone wants to be efficient and everyone wants to be secure. And I'm here to tell you, you cannot be both. You have to choose. If you're 100% efficient, you will be insecure. You won't have firewalls, you won't have the email filters coming in, you won't have links that are disabled. You'll be able to do whatever you want and communicate as freely as you can. Conversely, if you're 100% secure, you're using pen and paper. You have a carrier pigeon taking information from your desk to your assistant and then to your client. Very secure, unless the carrier pigeon gets captured. I digress. You can't be both. And so you need to understand where you are on that spectrum, and then you need to make investments in technology so that you can move towards secure or that you're limiting the scope of that spectrum. And then what you can't outsource or what you can't buy down, you insure against. And from a security and from a risk management perspective, that's how we secure our infrastructure. That's how we secure our companies. Because ultimately, cybersecurity incidents affect companies. They affect organizations. And when those organizations are critical infrastructure, you need a whole lot more than just a good insurance policy. And then the final piece, from a technology perspective and where we're going, artificial intelligence is changing the game. Hands down, this is the biggest driver of cybersecurity risk that we are going to see over the next 3, 5, 50 years, aside from quantum. Once we understand that what underpins AI is data, and we start legislating, and we start having a standardized framework over the data, we'll be able to get our hands around it. The fact that it is 2025 and we do not have a federal comprehensive data privacy regulation not just harms individuals, but it harms our ability to compete on the world stage from an artificial intelligence perspective.
You know what, AI can write that, by the way.
Yeah, I actually asked ChatGPT to put together legislation. Done.
All right, Ali, go ahead.
Yeah, well, the challenge too around AI is that some people look at it as like corporate Ozempic, and it's not a wholesale alternative to a talented, well-resourced workforce. And so cybersecurity really is an everybody problem. You've probably heard this sentiment before, but let's kind of dive into it a little bit more. And so while the Defense Department has a massive budget of over $800 billion, it's really difficult to project power and to protect our global interests if you can't get out of port or you can't leave base. And so if you go back in kind of the DeLorean to the time machine about 2 years ago, we had for the first time ever 4 principal cyber directors testify before Congress. This was on the House side, the Committee on the CCP, and I believe General Nakasone was about like 5 hours from retiring, but service to the country, came and sat on the panel along with Jen Easterly from CISA, Harry Coker from National Cyber Director's Office, who's the National Cyber Director at the time, of course, and then Chris Wright from the FBI. And the challenge that we had is this malware that was discovered in Guam and the teleco systems that support 3 bases, which is kind of the centerpiece for us to be able to ensure allies in the Indo-PACOM, but also leverage all of our investments in that theater, had been sitting there dormant for quite a while. And that is a challenge because it wasn't just focused there in Guam. The big reveal was like, hey, the Chinese are pre-positioning across critical infrastructure in the homeland. And every administration that comes in, protecting the homeland is kind of top on their priorities list. And so it'll be really interesting to see the approach as we move forward, because what we're doing right now is important, but it's not sufficient. It's not getting the job done. And so I'm really curious to see what the new administration is going to do, leveraging all elements of national power to be able to tackle this problem. And so if you don't take anything else away from here, and there's going to be a lot of like really good content you want to glean on, just always remember it's kind of the holy trifecta. There are tools which a lot of us contribute to and we promote because you need them. There's policy which the government or large corporations are going to want to have in place to systematically reduce the risk across their organizations. And then there's workforce. Everybody forgets about the workforce piece. And that is really challenging. It's difficult because even if you're super savvy, you're a cybersecurity savant, I can't hand you a piece of software and say you're good, right? You don't need any engineering support. You don't need any training. And so I just want to kind of continue to reiterate, don't forget about the workforce, especially as we see with critical infrastructure, because since everything has been digitized to get greater efficiencies, those systems, a lot of them, compressors, sensors, the industrial process that exists today was not designed to have these enhanced defense in depth characteristics, especially with a sophisticated threat actor like the CCP. And so we need our engineers to work with our network defenders to work together to understand that while it's absolutely a hard requirement that you defend the network, we need these engineers to be able to understand what APT threat actor looks like across the industrial process. Why are all your HVACs roasted? What is going on there? Who do you need to talk to? So we're in a better position, not just to be able to appreciate what's happening, but to build greater resiliency across all sectors.
Fire away.
So I envy conversations like this because rarely do I get to actually talk about cyber. And I say that kind of tongue-in-cheek because I get to talk about outcomes that have the potential from disruption by digital means. And so when I'm trying to be very compelling to individuals who need to focus on cyber, very rarely do I say anything about their cybersecurity tools. I start talking about what the outcomes are if this particular element gets disrupted or if you lose access to this particular operational system. And so that's the context we really have to operate in when trying to make the case for protection investments, for really plussing up the strategies that we've learned from lesson learned from big incidents. Now, the other challenge is There were days when we could actually count on a big incident lasting a couple months to kind of figure out and to see if it would impact anyone else. That timeline's gone from weeks to days to minutes to seconds. So now if we have a critical infrastructure partner that's been impacted by a cyber threat, it's just as likely that their neighbor in that sector or someone that is not related to that sector at all has the exact same problem within a minute. Because every one of these vulnerabilities that we've talked about shines like a star in the night sky to adversaries. And so really trying to get people in that cadence is not easy. I will unabashedly say that we are not built for that. We're not built for attack at all times from all sides. And that is where we are. And it's difficult to hear that for a lot of our corporate partners, for a lot of our state and local partners, because they almost come to a sense of, well, what can I do? If I'm being attacked at all times, what can I do? And so that's where the partnerships come in, and that's where we start to talk about we're all in this boat together, and that the faster we work together, the more we leverage AI and technology to try and simulate what some of these attack families might look like, to get preemptive things in place. We get past this, make sure it doesn't happen to someone else, technology and federal partnerships, which is where we are today. So we're really moving in a direction to say, let's use the tools of the trade to create synthetic and/or assumed attacks and start to make it to where you don't have to have someone go down for everyone else to learn from it. The threat space right now is awful. So if you see an intelligence officer and they're making a face, it's because they're making that face. It's really a situation where you don't get, as a federal government, to reach out and protect the critical infrastructure that you depend on. And critical infrastructure has to make a case that they have the budget and resources to bolster and meet the needs that you're putting forward. And it is a tough conversation. It's a tough challenge. But at the end of the day, the most compelling way we can do this is to talk use cases, is to talk disruption. When we talk about risk, we are very educated on how many degrees of risk you could have from a compromise, but not everyone in your conversation chain is going to share that understanding. So we need to get folks educated up into the way cybersecurity has these different layers of risk, and at the same time as cybersecurity professionals, be able to speak to the corporate needs of where this falls in their priorities. Because if their sales numbers are down, you have a challenge getting them to open their wallet to do anything. And so you have to be able to speak outcomes-based realities across the board. So I'll work on happier and gloomier comments as we go, but that's been the week.
All right, so Morgan.
So I'm just going to come out. I'm the government employee on the panel, right? So, I think one of the things that I really want to touch on, we talked a little about risk, cybersecurity, the threats that we currently face. And, Secretary Hegseth has come out and said, peace through strength, right? And so what does that mean from a cyber command perspective and how we're thinking about the opportunities that are currently presented to us, right? So, we have three main things that we're focusing on from a priority perspective: revive military ethos, right? So for us, that is about how do we show and demonstrate that we have the capabilities, the pre-positioning, the persistent access that our adversaries fear, that they know that they should not be necessarily conducting activities against our US critical infrastructure. Now, I'll be very honest. You cannot deter all cyber activity. That's not to say that we're going to be able to do that. But we need to be able to reestablish that baseline of what is acceptable and what is not. And so we're really focused on, okay, we've spent the last number of years building US Cyber Command. We have spent the number of years training our personnel, building capabilities and doing things. We now need to think about how do we accelerate and expand that as quickly as possible, consistent with the administration priorities, right? And second piece of it being rebuild the military. For us, what that means from a cybersecurity perspective and from a cyber operations perspective is to what Ali talked about, our workforce. How do we ensure we have that high-end talent who has that specialized training that can be able to operate in networks, defend networks that are most critical to us, that we know that are going to help us to, again, deter through denial and have that really strong positioning. The last piece of it is essentially, right, that deterrence piece, reestablish deterrence. We reestablish deterrence through our partnerships. A lot of the things that we've already talked about, the fact that we need to have strong partnerships with our allies, strong partnerships with industry. I'll be completely honest with you. We all know the fact that there's not a significant amount, there's not cyber talent just running around that we haven't tapped into. And so while we want to ensure that we build that specialized talent internal to the military and at US Cyber Command across the Department of Defense, there's a ton of talent out in industry that wants to help. And so how do we tap in team so that we can ensure that we're really leveraging all the tools of national power, all the people that are out there to achieve the outcome that we're all seeking to have, which is a secure and resilient US critical infrastructure, buying down risk, ensuring that our adversaries understand where our thresholds are, and making known that we have the capabilities to fight back.
All right, so I'm going to throw a curveball to the panel here. I'm going to give you my opening 2 minutes, but I kind of want you to think about challenging one of your panelists and the stuff they said. From what I've listened to so far among all of you, I've come up with 4 words. And I want everyone in the audience to be able to write these 4 words down, and maybe we can talk a little bit more, but more probably challenge us after this session to talk more about these 4 words. First word, typhoon series or typhoon, all right? Please, everybody in the audience, understand what's going on with that series of malware attacks. It's multiple series, but just look up the word typhoon. Second word, Moleshoe. For those of you who don't know what Moleshoe is or where Moleshoe is, look that up, because that actually is an actual attack that's happened in our country recently to a water system. Please, if you don't understand it, look it up. Third question, or third word, it's actually 2 words, cyber service. We'll talk a bit more about that, but we need to ask ourselves as a country moving forward, is it time for a cyber service? Michael and I have been talked on panels before. Right now, we have a disjointed US structure for cyber defense when our adversaries have a unified structure. And so they're being more effective than we are. So cyber service is the third. The fourth one, which I'm going to pontificate on for just a minute, cyber safety, not cybersecurity. All right? We have to wake up as a nation and realize that cybersecurity predominantly has been protecting data, protecting software. Cyber safety is addressing directly attacks to the operational technologies. I'm hoping everybody picked up on what Kat said earlier. Ovens, devices that can be turned against you. That TV behind her, which you're very familiar with. Actual connected devices that can create a threat, either to property damage or to human safety. OT versus IT. When you're talking OT, operational technologies, you have to start talking human safety. And what that does is creates a culture that rallies the IT team and the network teams with the engineers. I'm hoping D-Lock is somewhere in the room here. I can't see anybody. But what we have to do as an engineering community is acknowledge that cyber safety is different from cybersecurity. And we have to design everything from cars to appliances to robots to buildings to be cyber safe in addition to being cyber secure as a separate entity. And everybody knows in the room, when you start talking about cyber safety, that is no longer an optional program. You have to have a safety program. This building has safety features. Everything has to be done. Not through building codes, not through regulation, but because it needs an engineering standard of care. Engineers across the world designing systems ultimately have a professional engineering responsibility and a license to execute a standard of care. So we ultimately need to leave this room and start asking ourselves, how do we separate cybersecurity from cyber safety, and what needs to be done to promote safety in everything we're building moving forward? Because right now we have not done that, and we're vulnerable. And how do we collectively, privately and publicly, is bring academia together, bring industries together, bring agencies together, and start asking ourselves, how do we protect the human condition, human safety? And it's a completely different set of circumstances than protecting data, cybersecurity versus cyber safety. So those are the 4 terms. You guys could beat me up on that, or if there's anything you wanted to follow up with some of your fellow panelists.
I'll jump in first. The challenge that when you hear cybersecurity and cyber safety, it makes a lot of sense. You think, I'm used to threats against airlines, and I'm used to airline safety. Like the cars, we're used to, especially in the transportation sector, this analogy of safety versus threat. The challenge with safety, especially with the devices that were just rattled off, is that those are 10-year horizons. You're talking about engineering changes that from the point in which today a graduate from one of these amazing programs gets behind the development cycle of OT products, you're talking 10 years. There are some cases like webcams and IoT devices that have a much shorter life cycle. But when we look in the manufacturing sector, when we look in big equipment that's across energy, water, candidly health, those devices do not get repurchased on a 3, 5, or even 7-year schedule. So we have not just a cyber safety challenge in the long run where we need that engineering talent now. We have a cybersecurity challenge to make that gap survivable. And so it's not as easy as restarting that engine to get everyone to start using unique usernames and passwords for access, or making sure firmware is updatable, or using these secure by design principles to really make sure that as we crank out new and modern equipment, it meets the needs of today's problems, but also, suffice to say, addresses what may come up tomorrow. That's where we're headed, but we have a horizon to get over. And so we have to really keep an eye on how these attacks come at it. The good news is that there's a lot of low-hanging fruit to take on in the form of traditional vulnerabilities, software side issues, access issues, identity issues, to where you don't have OT being the primary source yet. But for everything we do to make the software side and the IT side better, it makes the OT side more shiny and more targetable. So we have a swinging balance that we have to be prepared for.
May I?
Please.
One thought on cyber safety. Let me just put it in terms in relation to the example that I gave you earlier about the insulin pump. So imagine, in this case, we're not talking about legacy platforms anymore. We're talking about new innovative tech, right? That your mother, your aunt, your grandparent gets one of these devices and it gets hacked. Somebody could conceivably take tens, hundreds of thousands of people hostage without ever kidnapping a single person. That is cyber safety. And the challenge, again, and we've talked about this before, is that balance between speed or efficiency and security. What we also really need to see is much more robust and standardized processes and policies in place to make sure that this doesn't happen, right? Who is liable if that happens? That company, you can get sued until kingdom come, but that's not going to do anything to help the people whose lives are at risk.
So there are a lot of things I want to beat you up on. The cyber service, I'm gonna reserve my comments for that, but I'm very excited to have that discussion as well. I'm going to piggyback on the security and safety discussion. I think cybersecurity is absolutely a misnomer. When you think of security, you think of Paul Blart Mall Cop on his little Segway tooling around the mall. That's not the mindset we need to have, because that's not how our adversaries view cyberspace or how they're using cyberspace. Our adversaries are using cyberspace for warfare, and whether it's misinformation or psychological operations, theft of intellectual property, uses of proxies such as ransomware actors, all the way up to kinetic or just on the verge of kinetic warfare like Salt Typhoon and Volt Typhoon. This is how they view that spectrum. And if we are sitting here telling ourselves that this is a security problem, we are badly misunderstanding how this war, and yes, it is a war, but how this war is being fought. And we are not going to be able to protect ourselves if we continue using the same nomenclature and pushing it down to individual companies to secure themselves against the nation state. That's the first thing. Safety, though, I don't think is necessarily the right terminology. When I think of safety, I think of the car industry, the automotive industry. When the automotive industry looks at safety requirements that are being put out, they do a risk calculation. And they say, is it going to cost me more to move this gas tank from the very back of the Pinto versus the lawsuits that are likely to ensue that I'm going to have to pay off when 150 people get killed in fiery explosions? And if it costs them less to pay off the lawsuits than it does to fix the Pinto, they're going to pay off the lawsuits, and they're not going to fix the Pinto. So this is a business calculation that's always going to happen for every company when we say these are safety requirements. They're going to make a determination as to whether or not it's in their best interest financially to do so. Where I think we can fix this is insurance, because everybody needs to have insurance. If you're driving a car right now and you don't have insurance, you can be subject to criminal penalties. Well, similarly, if a company is operating a network, and particularly in critical infrastructure, and they don't have insurance, we should be able to levy penalties against them as the government. And in that way, you can actually have the insurance carriers have a baseline cybersecurity requirements that they are enforcing against those companies. And in this way, we can utilize tools of the private sector in a way that's going to advance cybersecurity, nomenclature, right? But in a way that's going to make us more cyber secure. And then the final piece on that, as our adversaries are looking at cyber writ large, we need to have an ethos change for our net defenders. If they're looking at themselves as Paul Blart Mall Cop, that's a problem. They should be looking at themselves as cyber warriors. We are in a battle, and they need to treat it in that way because they're on the front line, and we need to start treating them in that way.
By the way, for anybody who's not a millennial, y'all know what a Pinto is?
If I can just add a few points there, right? So completely agree. We're having the same conversation internal to the Department of Defense of how we explain that when you think about cybersecurity, it's not just your IT professionals or your cybersecurity service teams that are servicing every network. It is literally mission assurance. So like if you want to be able, and Ali brought this up a little bit, if you want to be able to mobilize troops to support a crisis or conflict, you're going to have to do that through US critical infrastructure, right? Cyberspace is the only man-made domain. And so if you can no longer get weapons, munitions, and troops to certain locations in a time frame because a specific airport, port, rail network is down, you need to start thinking about how important cyberspace and cybersecurity is to you. And we have to change that narrative. To the point that was made earlier, right? If, you know, Mall Cop and defending, right? When we talk about one of our core missions at the command, defense of the DoD information network, right? A lot of people were thinking of, oh, cybersecurity, it's IT. We have a ton of intrusions or activities against this network. We're like, no, we are literally fighting for the DoDIN. We are protecting the network that the military uses to communicate with each other every single day, to operate, to move people. And if that breaks, we no longer have that military advantage. We're no longer able to rebuild. We are no longer to have that deterrence and be able to support the presidential priorities. And so that mindset has to change. However, the terminology of cybersecurity, cyber operations, cyber defense, sometimes it gets lost in that. And so that narrative is really important, both on the private sector side, but also happening right now internal to the government.
And so I'll kind of jump on as well. So this year marks the 15th anniversary of Stuxnet, which was a pivotal point in time where we crossed the Rubicon or the threshold of just digital disturbances to real world sabotage that, to your point around health and safety, there are real consequences associated with that. And I think it's interesting, and Morgan, like, correct me on this as well, that the incredible folks at US Cyber Command and NSA, as far as I saw, you know, when I was doing my research, began taking the fight to a lot of our adversaries overseas and disrupting their operations that were targeting the United States. That was around 2018 that I saw a lot of it being publicized. And then, of course, when we kind of dig and do the forensics around the Volt Typhoon malware that was found in Guam, was 2019. So while we have made significant strategic investments in trying to tackle the risk, our adversaries have found ways and seams to kind of work around some of the authorities that are in place that both the military and the US government have to respect and acknowledge. We've got a lawyer here, you understand, with posse comitatus and some other stuff, but we won't dig too far deep into that. But the whole point of this is that this is an extended battle space, as Michael was talking as well. Just because we may not acknowledge it or it may not impact us directly right now, everything that we see that's coming out on this typhoon season, so you had Volt, Salt, Flax, Silk, and I'm sure there's a bunch of other, like cornhole or whatever.
Cornhole typhoon.
Yeah, it'll continue to come, but a lot of that was put in the oven 2 or 3 years ago. And so we have to have a rethink on how we approach this, because we're in a position where it's not going to get better if we ignore it or we, you know, do analysis by paralysis. Investments need to be made, and we need to have a new understanding of how to leverage the diverse talent that exists in the United States across the federal government and private industry and academia as well, because as you continue to have students come through either a 2-year, 4-year, there's different ways to get educated and to develop your skill set. We need all of them. And what's wonderful about, you know, discussions around the rethink of a cyber force is you don't age out. And there aren't any, you know, typical like universal soldier requirements that kind of like go along with it as well. And what's also really cool about this new rethink is that if you are in the military, if you are a surface warfare officer, you can't just like, you know, quit and go work for Carnival Cruises and then expect to be able to come back in and lead like a DDG squadron. It just doesn't work that way. But if we do this rethink, it's like, hey, I can maybe leave NSA and go to Google, or I can go to Forescout, or I can go to GDIT, or anything else that exists. Sandbox AQ as well, and then come back in, and you continue to develop your career. Your skill set still grows, and it provides that perspective and that level of diversity to continue to enrich our shared mission set.
Mm-hmm. I think that's
so real quick.
Segue to the surface.
Yeah, definitely. We're going to talk about that in just a second. A couple things real quick. You brought up insurance. Absolutely agree. If you look at the history of engineering in this country, cities burnt down, boilers exploded. We created a way to manage risk in the mechanical systems. And there's three things you do with risk. You assume it, you transfer it, or you mitigate it. So if you transfer it, that's where insurance industry came from. And if you mitigate it, that's where engineering came from. So I 100% agree that we need a collaboration, private-public collaboration, not just within the engineering community, but also with the insurance industry. Absolutely. One thing to follow up on, we're in a modern Pinto moment. We are, seriously. Anybody who had their car bricked during a software upgrade in the last couple of years knows we are right now allowing our car manufacturers to upgrade the software in a car without our knowledge and potentially creating a safety situation. All I got to do is mention one word, CrowdStrike, where an update went bad and bad things happen as a result.
Well, the charging stations too. Every time we plug our EVs,
you're passing data. All right. So I would love to follow up with you on that, but we're running out of time. We need to move on to other things. But I want to follow up on that thought that, particularly in the automobile industry, our policy is not catching up with where we're at right now when it comes to vehicle safety.
And the other thing, just with insurance is also at a pivotal moment right now because if Salt Typhoon or Volt Typhoon or any of the other typhoons have catastrophic impacts on critical infrastructure, our insurance industry cannot stay afloat.
Yes.
They cannot pay for the type of catastrophic harm and damage that would result. And so the insurance industry is very interested in understanding and having a federal backstop, which in turn the federal government, large we, could actually put in requirements that would ultimately safeguard critical infrastructure.
The problem I have with that is we did that with flood insurance, and it creates a moral hazard, or it doesn't necessarily result in good behavior. Folks will go and build their houses in the floodplain knowing they got a federal backstop for insurance. And so, there's pros and cons to that. Sure. But I want to get to moving forward, all right? Because believe it or not, time is flying here. I brought up Muleshoe, but I could bring up any of the 150,000 water utilities around the country who are single-handedly trying to fight back the Russians, the Chinese, and the Iranians. What do we need to do to move forward to bring our authorities together? And Morgan, you can sit this one out if you want. As far as bringing our authorities together to be more protective of our critical infrastructure. We're building an Iron Dome. It's going to cost us billions and billions, and yet we have a very effective way to deliver an effect that's non-kinetic through cyber. How do we get after that? And I'll leave it up to the whole panel. There's an open discussion on that.
I'm happy to start just from a foundational perspective. When we look at authorities in general, and the way we're currently structured within this country from a federal government perspective, we are in silos, and there are iron silos when it comes to who's able to respond and who is responsible for defending or for attacking in response to a cybersecurity incident or a cyber attack. If it's military and a valid military target, well, that's U.S. Cyber Command. If it's espionage, you're talking about the FBI from a counterintelligence perspective, the NSA, the CIA, where we are taking active measures or not use the term active measures. We're taking an active role in thwarting espionage or thwarting intelligence activities. If it's general criminal activity, it's the FBI. Pretty much everything else is left to the individual private sector companies. Well, all of those authorities, as we have these silos, our adversaries don't. And so as I talked about before, where it's more of a spectrum, and you've got the Russians who are going to be Russian intelligence services conducting destructive cyber attacks against critical infrastructure. Well, is that an intelligence problem? Is that a law enforcement problem? Is that a military problem? And we don't have an answer because we are in our Title 10, Title 50, Title 18 silos. The one area where this doesn't overlap, and we'll get to this with the cyber service, the Coast Guard. The Coast Guard has all of these authorities. The Coast Guard is under DHS and at all times part of the Department of the Navy, where it can operate under Title 6, Title 14, Title 18, Title 10, Title 50. All of these different authorities the Coast Guard has, and if you think about their drug interdiction mission, they conduct these activities. They do it for national security purposes. They do it for law enforcement purposes. This is the model we need to look at for cyberspace. Because when the FBI has through the warrant process and through the federal rules of criminal procedure, the ability to get onto a private sector network without consent and clean it to preserve evidence, essentially removing PowerShell scripts to make sure that the Chinese aren't able to further an attack, but Cybercom cannot or the NSA cannot, that creates a problem. And so if we don't have a force, if we don't have an entity that is imbued with all of the authorities necessary, we're going to continue to play this interagency badminton where we're not actually effectuating a change and getting ahead of the problem.
Matt, anything on that or anybody else?
Well, we talk about the ability to, number one, with a cyber force, you have to have people that have kind of the ability to understand each other's authorities and missions, which is also a collaboration challenge in itself because people know what their role is. And so we have to see them as a system as opposed to kind of a target or action officer. But what everyone needs to understand is in addition to all the resources that the federal government can muster and the authorities that they can put forward, a draft went out and all of you were drafted as well. The challenge is that when we look at Volt Typhoon and we look at Salt Typhoon, they're not just going after big enterprise systems. They're using your home router to get into federal systems. They're using your cell phone to collect your session token for your email, hoping that you use the same username and password for work and home. And it makes it hard because I will tell you, for those that are not in this professional space, there's a lot of hours in the day and not many of them are focused on, I hope a nation state adversary isn't using my iPhone against me. But that is a reality. And so everyone in this room has to actually start considering what they put on their devices, where they take their devices, what the updates they're doing to those devices. And our adversaries have found that the non-professionals are a softer underbelly than the professionals and are using those to target us. So as much as we talk about needing to standardize and strengthen and bolster and collaborate better on the federal side and with industry, we're really talking about cyber professionals and risk professionals working together hand in glove in a way that's efficient. What we're not really achieving is everyone across the like-minded universe of we don't want to have our systems disrupted, understanding their part. And so that's an added challenge. Number one, we mentioned some Chinese products. If you have TP-Link in your home, you shouldn't. There are other things that you can buy right off the shelf right now that are a challenge to securing your devices and to securing your information, not necessarily that it could be used against your friends and family, but it could be used collectively to train AI to come across against us. New technologies and new tools have new uses for your personal data and for your personal data's metadata, like your location information. When you hear the government say TikTok is bad, it isn't just the content. It isn't just some of the challenges that app presents. It's the metadata and challenged information that comes from collectively all that information to be used and targeted for people who do not have your best interest in mind. And so when we look at devices, a lot of them are going to be manufactured in places that do not have our best interest in mind, so we have to be reasonable and resourceful in that.
Catter.
Yeah, I'll just jump in very quickly. So if we agree that cybersecurity is an everybody problem, which I think that we do, we've provided objectively the evidence to make that case, then we have to then talk about the force generation model around not just the government, but the everybody piece, private sector, public sector, academia. And we know that this can be accomplished if you look at Estonia as a country that made real objectives in ensuring that each one of their citizens understood the risk factor and their responsibility moving forward. And so the aggregate of all of that does build societal resilience. And then it also opens the aperture around being able to have a more holistic discussion on what are the tools, the education, and the training that's necessary for every single person, because everybody's a target. It is, to your point, and Michael's great book, you need to go and buy it, Battlefield Cyber. Whether you like it or not, whether you acknowledge it or not, your data and the information that you consider sensitive or not is lucrative. And Mark Montgomery, my old boss on the Cyberspace Land Commission, who will be on another panel, is famous for saying, thank God for ransomware. And you would be like, what are you talking about? It's like, because it's teaching everybody that your data is valuable. And that is just one element of the risk that we all will encounter. And it only continues to get worse until we have a rethink and a much needed new approach to fourth generation.
So warning order, lightning round coming up. But I want to follow up on one thing that Ali just mentioned, and that's fourth generation. We're on this university campus for a reason. George Washington has actually put this together for a reason, because they see the need for fourth generation. They see the need for cross-school disciplines, whether it be CPS, whether it be engineering, or it be some of the other programs here at George Washington, to start looking at what needs to be done for the future of fourth generation. So I think there's an understanding of that. I guess the question is, how do we put together, and this is not for the panel, but for us afterwards, how do we work with institutions like this to put together that, with our expertise, that fourth generation model that GW and other universities run the program, and training programs, and CompTIA, and everybody else, how can we make this more robust and more effective? Because right now the certifications that we go after may get us to a certain level of proficiency, but ultimately it doesn't get us to effective defense and protection. So I really do appreciate you bringing up the fourth generation model. All right, so I promised the panel we would have a lightning round of final big thoughts. So get your pens out. I'm not sure who wants to start. Go ahead.
I'll blitz very quickly.
This is lightning of the things you got to do.
Very quickly. So workforce is a passion of mine, and critical infrastructure, OT, is the hill that I'm going to die on. It has been seen largely as kind of a backwater, but that's where we have a high concentration of health and safety risks that we discussed up here. And so my big piece is, if cybersecurity is an everybody problem, and I'm focused on the, preserving the integrity of the industrial process, we have to pull the engineers in. Currently across the United States, there are very few programs, if any, where engineering students are required to learn about digital and electronic threats to the process, and also the necessity of working with network defenders to ensure that they have a holistic and well-positioned understanding of how to systematically reduce risk. It doesn't exist right now. They're kind of like the silo is there. You have to meet people where they are. And so if the threat is in our industrial systems, we have to pull in the engineers.
All right, who wants to go next? Final round.
I'll go next.
Go ahead, Kat.
Okay, so I like to get really tactical on these types of wraps up. So I'm going to leave you with three things. The first is Dr. Sarah Payne, who is a professor and an author at the Naval War Academy, likes to say superior alliances over superior finances, right? So in World War II, GE built planes. Ford built tanks. If you are here with government, or if you are here with industry, I encourage you to meet someone who's not in your immediate scope and form a relationship with them, right? Because if the day ever came where we would need to work together, at least you have that where you could share information. On the sharing information, it brings me to point 2. Events like this are critical. If you follow the Cyber Guild or George Washington University, continue to amplify and share this across your network. This is how we fill the room and turn all of you into a force multiplier of cyber warriors. The third is, please vote with your wallets. Now that you know some of the challenges that we have in cybersecurity, if you care about this, if you care about your children's health, your own human condition, you care about cybersecurity and safety. In that case, make sure that however you're spending your time, your money, or your energy is in areas where companies are prioritizing that too, because they're ultimately going to be looking to people when they're voting with their wallets to make those types of reinforcements.
Mike?
I'll be very quick. With respect to fourth generation and where we sit right now at George Washington University, if we are going to really get after the cybersecurity problem, we need to understand that this is a cross-disciplinary problem. This isn't an engineering problem, it's not an IT problem. I went to the Naval Academy and I got a Bachelor's of Science in English. I'm an English major, I'm an attorney. I'm not a technologist. We need all types. We need people who understand the technology, we need people who understand the threats and who are able to be philosophers about it and come up with what are the best solutions to these problems, irrespective of the position that they are coming from or irrespective of their background. And similarly, if you look at the stage, the vast majority of IT teams and cybersecurity teams look a lot like me, Lucian, and Matt. Cybersecurity needs to reflect what you're seeing on this stage. It needs to reflect a much wider range of demographics because we have those ranges of experiences and that expertise that really needs to be tapped into. We need to make sure that we're having that type of diversity within cybersecurity.
Right.
So I promised I would say good news. The good news is that right now we have a defender's advantage. It doesn't sound like it, but with AI tools, we have the ability to be in more places at once than we ever have before. And if there's a vulnerability, we can address it at scale. And so that's a very good thing. Another good thing is before, when we had a lot of interested parties in the cyber and IT community really wanting to be noisy and do neat and interesting things, there weren't as many jobs available. There are jobs now. Industry and government are hiring. So we have both the incentive of a human capital pipeline as well as tools that are starting to work better and better every day. We pair that with the great work that Morgan and her team are doing with deterrence. And so we have a three-legged stool where we have interest in the American public and our partners at getting better at this. We have tools getting better at this, and we're getting a much larger stick to whack people with. And so it is definitely a good turn around that corner. So I'll leave you with there is hope, but it takes diligence.
I'm going to give actually Morgan the last word. So I'm going to go ahead and actually give my final thought here as the moderator, listening to this incredible panel. As a nation, we have a series of priorities we're going to have to face. We have significant potential risk across all society, whether it be our national debt, whether it be where we're focusing our dollars on, what we're looking at for anything from poverty to economic levels to prices to sustainability, climate change. My concern here is that we have very determined adversaries wanting to do us very significant damage, and they've already planted those bombs to be able to do that. We as a nation have to wake up. The most immediate existential threat, other than a meteor, I don't know if you guys are tracking the asteroid that's coming our way, other than a huge asteroid, is a catastrophic cyber attack. As we know on stage, it's not that hard to pull off. So I think as leaving this auditorium, we ask ourselves, not just in this group, as a nation, are we focusing enough resources? I do not believe we are, on protecting our critical infrastructure sectors from an existential threat that will kill many, many people. And that's what we really need to leave here is what more can we do, Morgan?
Okay, I'll close us out. So there was a lot of topics discussed today, and we probably could have spent a lot more time talking about them. But the one thing I'll leave you with is that there is no silver bullet to cybersecurity. It is going to take regulation, it's going to take insurance, it's going to take cooperation, it's going to take talent, it's going to take a discussion about the fourth generation model, and it's going to take all of those pieces coming together to really start to buy down that risk and get after the adversary. And that's why these conversations are so important. You heard a lot of discussion about the Typhoon series today, but I want to be clear, make no mistake, China, the CCP is executing a global campaign using all the tools at their disposal against the US and our allies to gain an advantage to use in times of competition, crisis, and conflict. And they are using all of us, whether it be our home routers, our vulnerabilities, and they're taking advantage of it, and we need to fight back. And there's a number of ways that we're able to do that. And so you are all key to that. And lastly, on a happy note, opportunity. The opportunity is we know our adversaries, we've discovered these campaigns, we've talked about it, and we're all talking about how we get after it and fix it. And so involving yourself in that discussion and being here today is a step in the right direction. And just want to thank you all because this is a really conversation that we need to have.
All right, so with that, I'd like to join the audience thanking the panel. We're a minute over, so we'll get off the stage and we'll be available for questions afterwards. So thank you.
Well done, Lucian. Well, I'm glad Morgan introduced a happy note. I'm here for a happy note, but it was great to hear cyber security is an everybody, everyday agenda. A bit like the meteors, there is coffee, so you'll all be fast exit for the coffee, but I think coffee will be served where you had breakfast. For those of you who joined late, it's upstairs. Continue the conversation over coffee. Feel free to stalk our panelists in the friendliest possible terms. They'll be at coffee. And please make your way back from 11 o'clock. We'll be starting 11:05 sharp. And the next panel will be as good as the first. See you over coffee. Thank you.